Malta election 2026 or 2027. Rumors are swirling, WhatsApp chats are going off, and workers all over the Maltese islands are gathering next to the water coolers with one question. When will Prime Minister Robert Abela announce the general election?
So let's just dive right into it. 30th May. This is the date that many people are talking about at the moment. This is the earliest possible date that Robert Abela can announce the election. It would mean that he will have to call the election this weekend.
Wow.
So,
do you think it's going to happen?
I'm skeptical. Do you have plans for the weekend?
I do have plans for the weekend. I have a pretty busy weekend. But you know what? I have been hearing, so obviously over the last few months, we've been hearing rumors. You get messages, it's going to be this weekend. No, it's going to be next year. It's going to be before summer. It's going to be after summer. So it's a pretty exciting time, but I think a lot of people feel very uncertain, you know. And if you take it in a global context, there's a lot of global uncertainty as well. So I do have plans for the weekend, but I'm hearing a lot of indications that it could be called this weekend. What are you hearing?
I'm hearing the same things. However, the problem is a week ago I was hearing it was going to be 23rd May.
Exactly.
I feel it's a bit of a bluff. I feel he's bluffing. I think it's going to be next year, but we'll get into that. 30th May. The good thing about it is that it integrates the mass meeting, which has already been called for Workers' Day, which they do call every year. But it integrates it into the election campaign. It will be their first mass meeting. Perfect date. I'm still skeptical about it.
Look, if I was Robert Abela right now, I would be loving the mind games that I'm playing, particularly on the PN as well as on the general population. Look, he's cruising right now, you know. Yeah. Like I said, there's a lot of global uncertainty. You know, you have what's happening with the US and Iran, you have Ukraine, you have Gaza, all of that. And yet Malta actually feels relatively stable amongst all of this. And we know generally in wartime scenarios, people tend to not want change. So you have a pretty flowing economy. You have global uncertainty, prime ministers and presidents announcing wars left, right, and center, whereas in Malta it's not happening. Now, obviously, Malta has many, many problems right now. I think traffic's a big issue, migration's a big issue. But if I was Robert Abela, I would feel quite confident in keeping my cards close to my heart, letting anxiety run through the opposition, right? The less they know, the better for him. And whether it's this year, whether it's next year, I feel like he's probably confident that he's going to win. What do you think?
You know what I think it's going to be next year? Because they've said so many times. I know we should be skeptical, but when they're so blatant, I mean, I was listening to Alex Cilia, the Labour Congress last weekend, and he straight out said, we view the manifesto as a contract with the nation. We're still only 4 years in, we've still only done 80% of our manifesto. In other words, they have another year to go. If now the Prime Minister just suddenly calls the election a year early, then they're breaking the contract, right? According to his own words.
Now, do you think there's a chance that, you know, his own party, obviously, Alex Cilia is deputy, right? Yeah. Is there a chance that he would be spreading misinformation directly to, you know, inhibit the PN from getting ready?
No, the PN aren't going to fall for that. I mean, they're already getting ready and everyone knows that. They have a mass meeting on the 1st May. If anything, I think it's more likely that it's a bluff to get them to, you know, use up all their energy ahead of time. You know, use up all their proposals, get the people excited for nothing, and then when the election comes about, that have run out of steam. I think that's more likely.
So 30th May, yeah. What else do we have next? What's the next date? Don't tell me the week after.
The next date is exactly the week after. It's the 6th of June. However, this is unlikely for personal reasons. I mean, a key... we understand that a key electoral figure in the Labour Party is unavailable on that date for personal reasons. And I mean, these are the things that happen when you're planning an election or when you think about an election in a very short time frame.
Especially people on a small island as well.
Yeah, but people make commitments, right? People make commitments for weeks and months from now. So yeah, you have to work around those schedules if these people are so crucial to the process. So I think it would have been a great date, 6 June. I'm sure it's beginning of summer, but it's just not possible in that sense.
So that one seems rather unlikely.
Yeah.
Right? And then what's funny is the next date is basically the week after as well, right? This is the situation that Robert Abela's got the nation in. We're basically just saying if it's not this week, it's next week. If it's not next week, it's the week after.
But then after that. So 13 June, this is the next one.
Isn't that the World Cup?
Yeah, the World Cup would have just started, but I don't think it's only be the first games, the
okay.
first 2 or 3 games. Then I don't think there's any big games yet.
And Italy's not even involved, so like half of Malta's not even
Well.
interested anyway.
I guess the Italians will have to support Argentina yet again for like the 10th time in a row. But no, the World Cup had just started, so Football Fever would have kicked off. But we're talking towards the very end of the campaign, though. So I still think it's possible that it will happen. It's summer, but it's still not deep into summer, 13 June. I think it's possible, but then you don't have 1st May, right? I mean, there's no... The issue with 13th June is that there isn't an obvious date that the election can be called, right? So there's no mass meeting, there's no Congress, there's no public holiday or something. I don't think that there's an obvious date where he can really call it.
Just to explain it to people who might not know how the election kind of works. So it's 32 days, right? In Malta...
32 days is the minimum.
Exactly. So a government has to call an election date 32 days minimum away, right?
Yeah.
So that's what you're saying about an important
There's
date.
also, like, I will say this. I mean, technically you can call it 40 days, 50 days, 60 days, but it doesn't make sense for government, which is, wants to consolidate its power, to drag the election on for weeks. They want,
Absolutely.
in fact, Robert Abela said so himself. He prefers short campaigns, more focus. The longer campaigns drag on, the more uncertain it becomes. The more people the more unpredictable it becomes, because you never know what's going to turn up. Some voters might get a bit antsy. They might start turning on the government. It doesn't pay them. If you're in the lead, make it as short as possible. 32 days is ample time for a campaign.
Now, you mentioned Robert Abela specifically. Before we move on to the next date, let's talk about the man himself.
Yeah.
So, obviously, we know Robert Abela loves his summer.
Yes.
We've seen the images of him out on the boat enjoying it, and God bless that. So, considering his personality, it seems unlikely that he'd call an election in the summer, right?
Well, it does seem unlikely. In fact, the next date is the 20th June onwards, and the reason it's onwards is because I think it's very unlikely that it's going to be from the 20th June onwards. To be fair, when we say summer, Malta's summer starts quite early. In fact, last year, by 20th June, the MPs were still in Parliament, so summer holidays hadn't even begun. But I still don't think that people want to campaign in the middle of summer. Campaigning means you go out on the streets in the blazing heat.
Sweaty.
In your suit.
Moist.
Yeah.
We don't like it.
No, unless you're the PN in your leadership elections campaigns, which somehow always take place in the summer. People don't enjoy that. Mass meetings and the sweating,
And Labour notice.
Yeah, of course. So it needs to be in summer, because the good thing about summer is that you attract... It's more likely for people to vote. This is the Keith Schembri argument, which is that... if people aren't dedicated voters, they'll go out anyway on Saturday and start off the day with a trip to the polling booth, and then go out swimming or to a picnic or wherever. Whereas if you do it in winter, you just need to get out of the house, vote, and go back home. Those are the possibilities.
So you can't make a day out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And if it requires more commitment to do so in winter, and that means it's less likely that the numbers will be big. If it's a numbers game, which it is, if you don't just want to win, you want as many people as possible to vote. That's another argument in favor of holding it.
So then we move on to post-summer, right? After summer.
Yeah, the next date is November 26. Now, the advantage of that is that it's going to be right after the budget. Mm-hmm. The thing is, the last budget was okay, but it wasn't great. I mean, the big measure was tax cuts for parents of children. There are quite a few of those, but it's not everyone. So the people who don't fall under that category didn't benefit greatly from it. And usually the government would want the last budget for the election to be
very right.
The election budget, where they're just spending like there's no tomorrow, and
everyone's getting money.
Everyone's getting money, and especially now the deficit is. Clyde Caruana said the deficit is lower than as actually expected, so there's more leeway to do these sort of like great bountiful budgets, and holding an election right after will ensure the government is in the right state of mind. It has a nice shot in the arm, and then go straight to the people.
Before we move on to next year, which date this year would benefit the PN the most?
Which date would benefit the PN the 25th December? No one's going to vote.
Maybe he'd get a nice Christmas present. Is there any date that is of some benefit or, puts the PN at an advantage at all this year, in your view?
This year, I mean, look, the dates, all the dates that people are less likely to vote, right? So it will have to be, I don't know, mid-August, I guess. Maybe when school's just starting and people are feeling a little bit more...
Yeah, no, it is crazy. Like, if you speak to people in the street, like I've spoken to a number of businessmen who, one, all they're thinking about is when's the election. But what I've noticed is even traditionally PN-leaning businessmen, they seem ready to vote Labour again, because they'd say, why shoot a running horse? Why kind of change the situation that's working, which is very, interesting because these are people who are PN.
I was speaking to a PN-leaning person recently, and they were telling me that the economy is going great, the government's doing a really good job of managing it, but I'm still voting PN. And PN, exactly. And then in the same breath, they were criticizing the PN. There's no opposition, there's no policies. And I was like, why are you voting PN, then not Labour, if you think they're doing such a good job? It's like, it's because of principles.
Amazing.
I mean,
there you go.
Fair enough, but if this is what the PN has to hold on to, it's not great, right?
Yes. How far can old school loyalty get you in the face of a well-oiled governmental machine that's incumbent? So moving on to 2027.
So 2027, that will be around March. So March 2027. This is the cleanest date possible to call the election. Why? Because it's literally 5 years after the last election, 22. So they would literally have complete the full 5-year mandate. This is a big one as well. I mean, Robert Abela is definitely thinking about this, that he wants to fulfill his mandate as Prime Minister from start to finish. The last Labour Prime Minister to do so was actually Dom Mintoff.
Wow. Not Alfred Sant?
No, Alfred Sant. Alfred Sant's mandate was slashed in the middle, right?
Even JM, Joseph Muscat, never...
Joseph Muscat didn't... He never fulfilled it from start to finish. His first mandate was cut early because he called a snap election. I think he resigned in midway through his second one. So he didn't fulfill a mandate as Prime Minister, we're saying, not as the party, as the Prime Minister.
Do you think Robert Abela places that highly? Like, how important is it for him and the Labour Party to fulfill the mandate?
It is important. From what I've heard, it's quite important for Labour voters that they do want to see out the term from start to finish. Like, we're elected for 5 years, we're going to govern for 5 years. And this is why Alex Cilia said what he did, because it's the feedback that he's receiving from his own people. And for him personally, I mean, it's a bit of an honor, right? The first since Dom Mintoff, to actually fulfill a term from start to finish.
That's big.
And it makes sure that that his name goes down in Labour's history books as well. So he will be thinking about that as well, from a personal point of view. And why wouldn't he? I would.
High value, very high value.
Of course.
So
that's March 27. Yeah, that's a potential.
That's all the dates?
No, there are more. What do you think about March 27?
I mean, look, like I said at the beginning, March 2027 I think works. I mean, being in the history books is great. Robert Abela has actually done a number of things that were a bit unexpected during his tenure. One of them being the legalization of cannabis. That's going to place him directly in the history books as far as civil rights go. So maybe that is an important thing for Abela, even though it's not something that he's very much spoken about per se, but that's definitely an internal thing. That's why I said it's important to also consider the personality of the Prime Minister, right?
But do you think they can campaign for a whole year, though? This is the question, because they've already kind of started campaigning. There are billboards everywhere, and not just the obvious ones. Even, they're promoting their own shows. It seems that there's a lot of effort and resources are being piled into this campaign.
No. So when you actually look and analyze the signals from the parties, the billboards is like the classic sign, right? So the PN recently put up their billboards, the podcast ones, and then Labour have now put up their attack billboards, the classic Maltese political icon, the attack billboards, right? It wouldn't be an election without some attack billboards. So that's a big sign, right? And it doesn't really make sense to do that for a whole year, right? They could.
Yeah, or to start and then stop in the summer and then continue.
Right, it's a bit strange. That said, I really feel like Robert Abela is enjoying the mind games. Like, having everyone talking about him, having everyone asking, what's he thinking, that places him in a very good position of power, It literally is all in his hands, but it really, seeps into the minds. It must make Alex Borg, super anxious, not really knowing when is he going to be called to the battlefield per se. So that's just a classic war tactic, So if I was Abela, I would be loving the situation.
But there's another aspect as well, which is it keeps his own team on their toes.
As well.
Like the best way to ensure your team works hard is to have the election dangle the election from their noses, because all of a sudden now they have to meet more people, they have to organize more events, they have to consult with more people, because they know that an election is coming. I might either lose my seat or I might gain my
Absolutely.
seat. So you have to start working hard from now. There's also that aspect as well.
And in fact, we're seeing a lot of candidates hit the ground.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're going to the Marsa horse races. They're going knocking door to door. Like, we're seeing them do the classic things, the signals that are typical of a run-up to an election.
Yeah, coffee morning.
Coffee mornings.
Have you ever been to a coffee morning?
I've never been.
I wanna
Shame
go
on
one
me.
day. I wanna go one
Shame
day.
on me. Which one? Who would you go to? Of who? Which candidate? Who has the best coffee mornings?
I don't know. The one who can offer the best. Who's the Minister of Tourism? The Minister of they usually have the best food, I guess. Right?
They'll have the best coffee on the island for sure. Any other dates that we need to look into?
So then the last date would be, I mean, technically he can drag it out till August 27, but I don't think that's going to happen. The next potential date would be around April, May 2027. So that, you keep it in the summer, you fulfill your 5-year mandate. The only potential drawback is that you have a long drawn-out campaign, because people will then, you can't bluff people anymore. Everyone will know what's coming then.
Everyone's watching.
And I mean, people can start campaigning from now, essentially. And then if that's not what he wants, which it isn't, then it can have a negative effect in that aspect. But you get the positives, right? You get the 5-year mandate. You get to fulfill your manifesto. You get more time to attract more people to the fold. If you want new candidates, it takes time. You can't just go to someone and say, "Can you be part of the party?" and they're going to say yes. Some people do that, but a lot of people, they need a bit of time to convince them, to work on them. I don't think they have any new star candidates here, so they might want that. They have more time to finish the manifesto as well. I mean, it's important for some people to actually come up with great manifesto proposals. They said they want the best manifesto ever. So yeah, the longer you leave it, the better it is.
Any other dates?
No, those are them. I mean, August 2027. I'm not going to bother talking about
That's
this. It's not going to happen.
So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, those are basically our speculative, predicted dates for the election, the ones that are most likely to happen, why, and the implications for the nation, as well as the PM.
Finally, which date do you think is the most likely?
Listen, choosing one of these dates is like, betting on how many birds are going to be shot out of the sky when it's hunting season in Malta. Like, who knows? Yeah. Who knows? It's in Abela's hands. The best we can do is analyze and predict. But I think you made some very good points. And I think it's important for people to remember as well, it even affects labor people as well. It keeps them on their toes. It's going to make sure that they give the best of the best. They don't want to lose their jobs, right? So guys, let us know in the comments below which date you think it's going to be, and if we missed a date that you think might be likely, as well as whether an early or late election benefits Robert Abela or Alex Borg. This has been Johnathan Cilia
and Tim Diacono
for Who's Who Talks.